Okay, we're gonna go ahead and bring on our next speaker. Give me 1 second. We're bringing on our next speaker. She should already be in the background waiting, and she is, as always, we just put Panda up, y'all. She'll probably come back. I'm going to move Naa Adjeley to the webinar screen. You all give it up for our next conference speaker, Miss Naa Adjeley. Naa Adjeley is special to me and the BIPOC Herbalism Conference because not only was she a speaker at our last year's BIPOC Herbalism Conference, she is a returning speaker this year, and she is also a part of the admin here on the BIPOC Herbalism Conference. So while I've been speaking, Naa Adjeley has been sending messages to all the speakers, letting them know your time is coming up. She's been over there in the community, in our BIPOC Herbalism community, posting, letting you all know about the conference. She's been an essential part of our team, and I'm so glad to have her a part of the conference. Just my experience with Naa Adjeley, some years ago, maybe 4 years ago, when I first started my journey, I saw this sister on social media, and she had just begun medical school in the UA, medical herbal school in the UK. And I think I follow her on her YouTube channel, and I follow her journey through medical herbal school and becoming a medical herbalist. And when she graduated, I was so excited. I was so excited for her, and she has so much knowledge to share. And I'm like, if only she had a platform. I want to help her get her knowledge out there to more people because sis is knowledgeable. She's very passionate about decolonization of herbalism and being in a culturally inclusive environment when it comes to herbalism, because the environment that she was in, I'm just giving you a whole life story. The environment she was in school, it wasn't that. And so she went on a mission to share this knowledge, to share knowledge from her culture. She is Ghanaian as well, West African. And today she's going to dive into some of the ceremonies from her culture. So her session, let me bring it up again, is African ceremony, a GaDangme Roadmap to health and wellness. So you all give it up for Miss Naa Adjeley as she dives into herbs and ceremonies from her culture.
Thank you so much, Abril. Just to let everyone know, Abril was one of the first people to actually give me my first opportunity on the big stage. So I'll always be grateful because sometimes when you're in those small situations, people don't even pay attention to your existence. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. I think because of time, I'm going to go right into it if you don't mind. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me just make sure I have everything. Is that coming up? Ooh. Perfect. Okay, can everybody see that? Can I get a yes? Okay, let me see the chat. Okay, perfect. So as Abril mentioned, my presentation is about the GaDangme Roadmap to Health and Wellness. I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction about me and who I am. First of all, I started off as a cultural researcher. I was born and raised in the UK. So it got to a point, I grew up in the area where all the Africans were called African boo-boos and were always like ridiculed and because of what the TV was showing about our culture. But I was fortunate because I had a grandmother that will tell me the most amazing stories about our heritage and our culture. And so I grew up like, I don't care what these people are saying about me. I want to learn more about my heritage. And then my grandma left to go to Ghana when I was 15 and didn't come back. So at that point, you're kind of forming your identity. And I wanted to understand more about what does it mean to be a GaDangme woman, which is an ethnic group based in Accra and the eastern region where the Dangmes are mostly based. And so I started learning, and the more and more I learned, I was absolutely amazed, more shocked that I don't understand why we're not sharing more of this. And I noticed that there were some threads that were running through the culture, which is what I'm going to share with you as roadmaps to health and wellness. Now, this study of my culture and my heritage led me to take the path of being a herbalist. My ancestors have a very interesting way of telling me about myself and what I should be doing next. So it took me down the path of herbalism, and then I started the process of studying in the UK. But then I was able to fuse the two. I think studying in the UK gave me the scientific element, but the cultural, spiritual element was provided by what I learned in my culture. And then I'm also the founder of Trofanier. Trofanier is the name of my organization, who I am. Trofa is a Gan word for medicine. And oddly enough, tro means tree or root, tree, and then fa means root. So tree root is literally our word for medicine, and nye means mother. So I was learning so much about what was going on in the community, and to me, it made absolutely no sense. And when I was learning, when I was taught about how research papers are done, about data, colonization, what it did, I realized that what they took away from us is the ability to gather knowledge and apply it. So the whole purpose of Chofanye is to actually empower people to take charge of their health. And I would also like to say I'm a follower of traditional practice. I'm not ashamed of my culture. I'm not ashamed of my heritage. I absolutely love it. And what I have experienced is life-changing. And so when I talk about these various things, I'm talking about experience. From experience. Now, what is African culture? The first thing is, usually when we think about African culture, the first thing that people think is, oh, amazing dances and music and food. And I think it's reducing what the culture is, because it's like when we were, colonization happened, they reduced everything we were to forms of entertainment, like we were jesters in the European king's court. But our culture is so much more than that. It's spiritual based, it's science based, and our dances are food, and food are often gateways. So they're not just mere ingredients you put in the plate, they are gateways to harnessing other elements. It's definitely not individualistic. We are not individualistic beings. We were not designed in that way. So even if we have some rituals that are relying on the individual, the end goal is always the collective, it's always the whole. Our culture is also more than what we visibly do. Our culture covers our mindset, how we think, how we connect. Now, I am a believer that there's a spirit of Africanness. There's African people throughout history have been known to be, wherever they land, wherever they go, they build and they create. If you look at the history of African peoples, you'll always find that they've taught people stuff, they've brought new ideas of things, they've built new amazing flourishing systems. So that spirit has birthed thousands of cultures and thousands of pathways. And pathways is something that I want us to focus on. And I feel that there's a need to remove the Western colonial lens. So anything you want to learn is right in front of us. And colonialism won the battle, or won the small element of it, by making our culture seem less than. And therefore, we settled for less. And that less that we settled for is what we're now suffering with in terms of our health, our mental health, our physical health, and our spiritual health. We are seeing the results of settling for less. So now I want to talk about what is medicine, and I'm going to give you a story of my grandmother. So I was with my grandma. We were lying in her. She was lying in her bed, and it was daytime. And I was like, "Why don't you come into the living room? You can get some fresh air with the fan." And she said that she'd prefer to lay where she is because that's where the wind comes in. And she said the wind is God's medicine. She said this in Ga. So for me, when you say it in Ga, it makes you think that she is adapting her behavior based on how she's going to be able to connect with God. She wasn't choosing to sit in a living room with the electric fan. She was choosing to be in her bedroom, lie down, so she can meet God's medicine. So we're not just thinking about a prescription. We're not thinking about this little tablet that some pharmaceutical company designed to make billions. It's what we eat, it's what we say, it's what we think, it's what we do, it's our very existence is medicine. And therefore, when we're talking about healing, healing must encompass all things. And this is what our ancestors did through our culture. Our culture is a roadmap for prevention, and it's a roadmap for healing. And the other thing is, by having this holistic perspective, it allows us to see that anything that does not work alongside this is a poison. One thing that Western culture did and colonization did was separate us. And so they can provide us with the most disease-looking food that never goes off, and we are going to eat it and consider that nourishment. In African culture, according to what the culture and what medicine is about, that will be straight up and obvious as a poison. But this culture is able to present us with so many things, so many ways of life that are literally a detriment to who we are. Now, throughout this presentation, I'm going to reference various elements of our culture. There's certain patterns that I've seen through various stages of life. And so these are the examples of the culture that I'm going to refer to. So first of all, we have our naming ceremony, which is Bojimo. And this is the day that the child receives their name. And this is extremely important. So my name is Naa Adjeley. So Naa means princess. It is a title given to all Ga girls. The Ni is the title given to all Ga boys. And Adjeley means Ajay Bidede, which means Ajay's first girl. So it pinpoints me to a family house, a particular area. And as a result of pinpointing me to that family house, that it's letting the ancestors know that if anybody calls my name or if I'm called, the ancestors are going to pop into action because they recognize my family line. But also because I belong to a certain family house, there's certain rules and regulations that govern my family house. So this day is very important because this is the day that the child is introduced to the community, their ancestors, and the principles that govern that community. The second major transition is our puberty rites. Now, depending on the family house you're from, there's different puberty rites. So there's places in Gamashi, they have the Ochenche, the Dipo is Dangbe areas, and Ashi is the puberty rites in my area. So it's like our secondary school. Originally, we used to have it for years. We learned about our bodies and how it worked and how we can contribute to the community and so on. And then colonization came because what would happen is the girls, or for example, would disappear from 5 so years. And then when the colonizers tried to change us and tell us this is what we needed to do, the girls weren't listening. So they ended up banning the whole rite and then introducing it under a Christian king. And it was a very different thing to what it was originally. Then we have the New Year and the Mayem. So we have Homowa, which we've just recently celebrated. So our New Year starts in September. And then we have the Mayem, which is the New Year for the Dangbe people. And this is an example of yearly transition. In our culture, we have regular opportunities to reset. We have weekly, yearly, and monthly opportunities to reset ourselves. And then we have the funerals, which we call Yala in my language. And this is the final transition of life. And it's where the circle of community kind of comes full circle in this realm. So where you were introduced in your Bojemo and the community was there, you will now be responsible for helping your family member to transition to Bohiaji, which is where our afterlife is, and so on. So I'm going to be referring to lessons that I've learned from these various festivals. And then we have the Gojemo prayer. Now, this is I'm not going to go through it, but a lot of the stuff I say is based on ideas in the prayer. There is a prayer that we say during our naming ceremony, which tells the child about who we are, what our responsibilities are to you, and what your responsibilities are to us. This is almost like a prescription, if you want to say, in terms of health and well-being. This is how we operate as a society. There are other activities that happen during this time, but this is just an example of some of the principles that I'll be pulling out across my next few slides. So the first thing is we have a saying, the wind blows before a Ga person speaks. We also have another saying that we're in the naming prayer that we have to come to respect the world. Now, when we talk about the world, the Ga person, because we operate in spirit all the time, we are basically telling the Ga child that because we know the spirits all around us, you are going to see it in different forms. It's going to come to you in different ways. It is alive in us. It is not dead in us. We always have that communication. So not everything that you see, you blurt out. Not everything that because some of these spiritual messages might be for you. It might be to teach you something. And if you blurt it out, you're making yourself vulnerable, and so on. Or you might see a ritual that's going on and blurting it out could have an effect on the ritual. So not everything that you see, you speak. So you have to be in a position to observe and take in information in all its forms. And sometimes it requires us to be intentionally silent. So I remember, and this is how it comes as part of my everyday. So I was speaking to an elder and I wanted to learn about the Ga rules of etiquette. And obviously thinking with my British lens, I'm thinking cross your legs and have certain knife and fork. And she said, when you see somebody on the street with a leaf in their mouth, you don't greet them. And in my mind, I was like, that's a very interesting thing to add in a conversation about etiquette. But it was a perfect example of how ingrained spirituality was in the life of the community, that you would see someone walking on the street with a leaf in their mouth. And as you can see in this picture here, it means that the girl has taken a vow of silence. And there are many reasons why somebody will take a vow of silence. And that leaf is to help seal that, but also to let people around them know that they've taken this vow of silence. Traditionally, if somebody was to send a very important message, for example, they will give the message to the person, put a leaf in their mouth, and they were not to take that leaf out until they reached their destination and took the leaf out, and then they were able to talk. So this is an example of medicine, because silence is a medicine. Noise kind of dampens our ability to focus and see the truth when it reveals itself. So many of our traditions have periods of minimalism and silence and less noise, and it also includes stress. But when we want to look at it in the West, I'll give you some examples. I don't know if you've noticed how even reels where people are talking, we're putting lots of music behind and we're constantly making noise. There's noise absolutely everywhere. And if you're dampening our ability to focus, then it also kind of dampens our ability to kind of hear messages that might be coming through in all forms. It's a form of distraction. So sometimes in terms of when we're talking about the environment in which herbalism will take place or medicine will take place, we might have to intentionally force ourselves to be silent. And as I mentioned before, seclusion. I noticed that in every transition, there was a period of seclusion. In the naming ceremony, the first 7 days, we would not see the mother and the child. So on the day of the Kojima will be the first time that we would see the mother and the child. And that's because it's a very vulnerable time for the person. Puberty, again, the people taking part in the puberty rites will be secluded in a particular place. Marriage as well, there's a time where they seclude the person who's getting married, and they dress them up, look after them and nurture them. And even in death, there's a period of seclusion, including for the partner. So for example, in the widowhood rites, the woman, for example, will be secluded for a number of days to help separate them from the spirit of their partner. But at the same time as well, just in case there's like a practical reason as well, there might be a pregnancy, you kind of need to watch the person just to make sure that they haven't been pregnant by their previous partner and so on. So there's always a period of seclusion before any major transition. And so when we're talking about secluding, we're talking about mental, the physical, and the spiritual. So you're secluding yourself as a person, but also secluding yourself from ties and distractions from when you're vulnerable. There are certain times in our lives when we're particularly vulnerable, and sometimes the best form of medicine is to remove ourselves, especially from an environment that is toxic. So it's like there's a proverb, a Ghana proverb that basically says, you can't stand in thorns to remove thorns. So sometimes you have to remove yourself from that environment in order to be able to start the process of removing the thorns. So during this time of seclusion, you need to control what it is that you're feeding on. What you see, what you hear during this time is very important, and is often controlled by who and what you engage. Sometimes you're not expecting to hear something, but by engaging a particular person or a particular thing, automatically all of that stuff is coming through. So when it comes to medicine and when it comes to times of herbal medicine, sometimes seclusion is a form of that. And also related to that, we have something called a ban on drumming and noise making. And I remember when I was first teaching people about this ban on drumming and noise making, I was essentially accused of being very un-African, because drums are forms of communication, and how would we have a moment in the year when we're banning that form of communication? And I think this is a kind of a result of colonization defining what African culture is, that to the extent that we feel that drums are the sole definition of African culture, and we're so much more than that. And drums are our form of communication. So if we're limiting that during the month, there is a perfect reason for that. So the reason why we have this ban on drum and noise making is just before we celebrate our new year. So when we celebrate our new year, what essentially happens is there's an announcement in the town, because it covers particular areas. And for about a month, so this year it was, I think, around the 6th of May to the 7th of June, we announce it. And what that basically means is there's no drumming, no clapping, no singing, no funerals, no parties, no nothing in the whole area. And that is to allow time for the land to heal, for the priests to do what they're doing in terms of their fasting and prayers, so that we're able to usher into the new year. When that ban on drumming and noise making happens, so the drums that you're seeing now is drums that are only brought out for when they're breaking the ban on drumming and noise making. They're very extremely old drums. And that's the announcement that the new year is coming. But what this teaches us is is that this band is helping activate the land and environment ahead of the new year. So what we do as communities, what we do as individuals is helping the environment to activate it in a certain way. We're in communication, we're in commune with the land, and we're saying to the land, this is the ban and us being in silence, us fasting and praying, us not distracting ourselves with parties and clapping and making noise is a way for us to activate and be in commune with the land so that the land could produce and be ready for us to the harvest. So even clapping, we can't do. So when we think about it, one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, as a community, in the way that we behave and carry ourselves, do we ever give time for the land to rest? Do we ever do anything that is poisonous to the land? And so when we're talking about medicine and our interaction with the land and our interaction with the soil, what can we do as a community to give that time? And even when we do our harvest festivals, once the new year is over, there are days that we are banned from doing so. For example, there's days we're banned from fishing. You do not fish on certain days. We go, we thank the sea for the provision, and then we will leave the sea alone to rest. And unfortunately, because of commercialization, a lot of areas have even just abandoned that element of it because it's all about money. But what we're finding now is, whereas before we had certain days we didn't fish and we just allowed the land to rest with our behavior and our communication with the land, we used to be able to go out and catch plenty of fish. And now, because we're disregarding, the land is also saying, okay, you're not paying attention. We are also not going to work to our best to help join with you. So this is just an example in terms of what do we do in terms of our environment, in terms of our behavior, in terms of our community, and what conversation are we having with the land? What are we telling the land? Another thing we do is during the naming ceremony, especially, we have a moment where we introduce the child to certain foods, and we say, this is the food that sustains us as a community. This is the food, so please know the difference. We want you to be aware of what is right, what is wrong, and we use food to do that. And so it's a symbolism of being able to recognize what is good and evil. So in our culture and our tradition, like, we have food for particular occasions. So we don't view as you eat what you want whenever you want, right? And also there's certain energies associated with food and family lines. So certain places we don't eat particular foods. If you're from a certain family house, because your certain family house is associated with a particular energy, that energy might say to you, no, we don't eat this food. I know a person who wanted to go into snail farming and couldn't go into snail farming because that family shouldn't have anything to do with snails. I was speaking to a priestess who is the priestess of the deity in our area, and on Wednesdays she doesn't eat anything fermented because her deity does not like fermented food on Wednesdays. If you can see in the picture that's I'm not sure, I think it's to the left of your screen, that food is called kwekle. This is a food that we only really cook, or supposed to cook, during our New Year festival. And as you can see, the muncher, you can see on his wrist, he's got this white thing on his wrist that tells you he's a person of position, and he's sprinkling the kwekle around the town. So this is something we specifically have only during our New Year, and we're not supposed to eat it the following day. So we're supposed to have it just for that day. Again, modernization, people not paying attention to the culture, they just do what they want. But what it is a sign of is that you're not having access to everything all the time is not a sign of wealth, as this society will make us believe that we will give you as much toxic food as you want. And the fact that you can make a choice out of a million things means you're in a brilliant position. We don't consider it that way. And food is healing and to be shared. You cannot share what is toxic. And traditionally, diets change, marking important transitions. And I have another story. So again, I like having conversations with my grandma during my learning journey, because our grandmas have so much to offer. And she was saying, like, in terms of being a Ga person, that when you're eating, you're supposed to eat from one side neatly to another. And I'm like, I'm eating food. Why do I have to eat from one side to another? And she basically said to me that it's so that if somebody wants to join you to eat at any point whilst you're eating, the plate always looks appetizing. So even in how we're eating so that the community, if anybody in the community needs sustenance, they can get sustenance. During the Homoa period, you could be an absolute stranger. If you go to a family house, they should feed you during this time. No one should be hungry during our New Year times. I also learned something very interesting when I was observing the foods that we eat during these important transitions. So when I was searching puberty rites, I was very, very shocked to find that they consider jollof rice and fried rice to be junk food. Now, I don't know how many of us Africans are on this call, but the majority of our foods is rice-based. So I just found it very interesting that we consider it to be junk foods. And when I was looking at the foods that they were giving, like a lot of millet-based porridges prepared in different ways, I had never in my whole entire life of being a GaDangme child ever heard of these foods. And yet these were ancient foods that our ancestors had eaten that were no longer in use because we're all just being very rice-based. So essentially, it was the African equivalent of having fast food, McDonald's and Burger King every single day. The other thing, there's a lot of African foods that we think are traditional and are not actually traditional foods. So stockfish seems to be a very strong flavoring in a lot of our foods, but it's actually a famine food. It was imported from a European country during a war, and then it became the basis of all our foods. The other thing is that we realize is, as I mentioned before, food gives us the ability to recognize between good and evil. And some of these really strong seasonings actually hijack us. So we're unable to do that. So instead of being in a position where you can easily switch off and have a period of silence, easily meditate, you're now thinking about your next fix. It's like you're being put in a perpetual state of drug addiction. And that stops your inability to connect with the spirit world, which is constantly around us and constantly communicating with us. And you're being blocked from that. And food is one of the ways to do that. So when we're thinking of medicine, we have to make, when we're saying food is our medicine, we're also saying that if what you're eating is not medicine, then it is a poison. And how that poison translates is many different ways. So sometimes I think because it doesn't kill us immediately, we think it's okay to eat foods that do not nourish us mentally, physically, or spiritually. The other image I'd like to point out is that little circle at the bottom. You can see someone, a priestess, as you can see by the bracelets on her hand. She's doing communion with millet. So our representation of communing during our New Year, so this was during the Mayan festivals, which is basically the festival of millet, because Ma is one of our main grains. She's sharing the main grain with the community as a form of communion. You can't do that with ultra-processed foods because it's poison. You're not going to commune with other people with poisons. So food gives us the ability to recognize between what is good and what is evil. By putting our bodies in a state, if it's good, it puts our bodies in a state to be receptive. Another thing that we do, especially with the naming ceremony, is we place the child butt naked on the floor. And what I find interesting in that is during the time that they're put on the floor, I was speaking to an elder and they said that when they used to do this, because now it's like some of the more civilized groups of society are basically putting cloths and blankets before they put the child on the floor, but still in the villages, they put the child directly on the floor. And he would say back in the day, children will never get sick because you're introducing the children to their family, you're introducing the children to the community. And so because they're being introduced to the environment that they're going to live in, it protects them spiritually because now the environment recognizes them. When you introduce the child to the world, when you introduce the child to the society, you also introduce the child to the earth. And this is protecting them from future sickness, but also kind of seals the lines of communication between the two, and they're able to read the land. They're able to communicate with the land. And during this time as well, in this kind of communication highway, now it's kind of open, there comes a moment where an upstanding member of society taps the child with their leg and say, take on my character, take on my character. So now the child is receptive. He's now able to receive a lot more as a result of being connected to the ground. So it is important. Like a lot of the children back home, wearing the slippers and all that, they're running around barefooted. And it's not because they can't wear slippers, but there's a connection with the ground that you have when you're playing and you're walking around every day and your foot is on the ground. And also it's knowing and feeling the land where your ancestors are. The naming ceremonies, the puberty rites and the marriage rites always happen in your ancestral home. So like I mentioned, I come from a particular family house. It's named Adjeley or Bonko. So whenever I'm doing certain events or funerals, birthday, or not birthdays, puberty rites, it's always done in that family house. And back in the day, it was literally where our ancestors were buried. So you're really genuinely being connected with them. And one of the things that the colonizers did to kind of separate us from the land, because when you are in a place where your ancestors are literally buried, there's a connection to the land that you're willing to fight for. And obviously they didn't want that. So they decided cemeteries. So they put all our ancestors in this land that's far away and then kind of destroyed the connection that we still have it, but something was missing in terms of that connection to the family house and the extent that we don't fight for it in the way that our ancestors would have. And then also it's the power of water we have to recognize in the form of medicine. So we do our ceremonies at particular times of the day, especially the naming ceremonies. And one is to be able to show the child to the moon, but also dew is available at that particular time. And water is very important. It's changed slightly, but some people don't realize that in our tradition, the originally preferred drink for libation is water. And two, when we go to somebody's house and we're doing greetings as Ghana people, it's really funny. Our greetings are extremely long. But one of the things that we do, the first thing we ever give a person, even if we've got loads of other drinks in the house, the first drink you ever give your guest is water. Because the first aim is to nourish them from their journey, and no other drink can do that better than water. The other thing is, what you do is you feed the ancestors first. So you'll visit someone's house, they pour the libation to the ancestors, and then you drink. Now imagine trying to give your ancestors Fanta. Like, I mean, that is, you're looking for something really nourishing. So once that's done and you've drunk water, you've satisfied, then they will bring another drink. You will never offer any other drink other than water. So the water that you use in your medicine is extremely important. And one of the ways, again, they try to dampen our spirits and poison us is by having an effect in terms of our water. So the water that we have in terms of our medicine and our plants, even plants know this, like when you water your plants compared to rainwater, you see how differently the plants behave. Now, both of them are considered water, but there's clearly something about nature's water that makes it different. So when you're using it in terms of medicine, like spiritual healing, sometimes it's good to get plants that kind of keep the dew on it. And I know that, for example, in the West, lady's mantle is a good plant that keeps a little bit of the dew so that you can use it for your spiritual practice. And in terms of health and well-being, if there's anything that you can change, like now, is to get good drinking water. Then the other thing that is important is time. So our ceremonies are usually carried out particular times of day, like at dawn is the naming ceremonies. Like now, you know, in modern days, it's like everybody's going to work, so we have to do it and da, 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 da. But traditionally, it's at dawn. Puberty rites start really early. And so rituals, there's a sleep-wake cycle. We have to understand the sleep-wake cycle, or the rest and power cycle, applies not just to humans, it applies to plants and it applies to spirits. So rituals are done at various times of the day to work with the sleep-wake cycle of the various elements. So the plant that we have here, we call it a phobi or baby. And I think in the Caribbean, because I was doing research on this, it's called Picni Pombac. And I find it very interesting because the same reference on the seeds on the back of the plant, we call it children in the Ga and the Tree languages. I found that in various parts of the Caribbean, they're referring to it in the same way. So I just find that really interesting in terms of our naming patterns from the plant. But as you can see, the plant is actually closed up. During the day, it opens up. And so you wouldn't pick the plant at this time. So we have to be aware of these cycles of when to carry out and do certain things in terms of medicine. And we have to honor those various cycles. We have to honor the cycles in our own body. We have to honor the cycles of the energies around us. And we have to honor the cycles of the plants. And so treatments and prescriptions that we have in our culture can include time of day, during the week or month, as well as in terms of what's going on in nature and the environment. So, for example, in our tradition, the day you were born is actually more important than the date. So I was born on a Monday. So my, say, ritual day or my soul day is a Monday. So when I'm doing things, the time, the importance is preferably to do it on a Monday. So my birthday is in July. So if my birth date falls on a Saturday, but we have this traditional Ga cake, we want to call it, which has yam and eggs. I won't have it on the Saturday, which is the date of my birthday. I'll have it on the Monday after, because we're honoring the Klagbi. If anything happens to you, or any struggle that happens and you want to honor your soul, you do it on your soul day, which is a Monday. And then my friend told me about this term, which stuck into my head about how Western culture has removed us from our medicine, has removed us from our heritage. And she used the word urgentocracy. So healing and health takes time. And one of the greatest injustice of this system was to take time away from us. Time to cook, time to heal, time to commune. We now only have time to work for a system. Back in the day, you can survive, or the family can survive on one wage. Another member of the family can cook for the whole household, can make sure everything in the community was held. We had people who were community herbalists, community midwives. And then they said, and then, empowerment, all of us can go to work. And now people can't survive, the household can't survive on just one wage. And even then, two people working full time still can't afford the basic things that they need. They don't have any time to invest in their health. And because they've taken that time, because we can always get it back, it now leads to them preventing us, giving us alternatives. So the alternative to cooking your own food was the alternative that they defined. The alternative of us communing was the invention of social media. So now we don't even know how to talk to each other face to face and get the medicine of face to face communication. So time is also medicine. Time is important. Time is also healing. And when we're looking at longevity and community healing, we also have to create a time for us to be able to honor the time cycles of various elements, including ourselves. We need to have our sleep. We need, the growth hormone and the healing aspects come at a certain time of day. We need to be asleep by this time. It allows us we create an environment and a system that allows us to be able to do all of these things when we're talking about healing and herbalism. Another thing we say in our prayer is, may our brooms be thick, we meet in a circle. And essentially, we have this proverb that says we have this stick broom. I'm sure many of us know what it is, that it's easy to snap one, but when all of them are together, it's harder to snap because we're in unity. Now, community medicine is extremely important, and it's an often neglected part of healing in the West. And it applies both in prevention and cure. And I say that because when you're in your family house, the way we built our family house is like we built it in the shape of like a C, and then you have this compound in the middle. So I find it really interesting in the way the houses are built in the West. You can be in the house the whole day and somebody doesn't know you're in the house. Whereas in the way we built our compound houses, when you come out, there's no way you can spend the whole day and no one knows you're around or where you are because of the way the houses are built. Just the simple act of going to the bathroom or moving around, the whole compound is going to see you. You're exposed to the outside. And because it's the shape, there's an encouragement of gathering in the middle of the house. And so if something's wrong with somebody, if something is going on with somebody, somebody's going to see, because the way even we build our houses and we interact, our greetings, Ojeko is our way of saying good morning. It means like you've come out. Minaoko is our way of saying good afternoon, which means I've seen you again. So it's all about I'm seeing you, and therefore if something's happening, we would know. If something's going on, if there's a change, and we're very kind of open in our bodies with it, because the people in the community are probably the ones that did your puberty rites. They've seen everything. So they can tell you when something's going on. They encourage you to be aware of your body. And so that element of community medicine, now people who are sick and they're too scared to tell people because they're scared of what people are going to say. That community element where we come out with things is taken away. And also the circle. Sometimes the responsibility a community member had during your naming to welcome you into the community, you do for them when they enter the realm of the ancestors. So the picture that you see here, it kind of gets me upset because this is the funeral of my grandaunt, like my grandma's best friend. And so we have a belief that there's a ritual that you have to perform in order to be able to cross over. And one of those rituals requires a spiritual bath. And so what happens here is that all the members of the community come with a big bowl and then they enter the bath. I can see, how much time have I got, Abril?
5 minutes. So I'm pretty sure there's questions, but Naa Adjeley will actually be in the VIP later. She's gonna be hosting the VIP. So you can go for the finish up, and then we can answer the Q&As in the VIP. People are saying, keep talking, keep talking.
Okay. No
So
worries.
yeah,
I think I've got like 2 more slides left, so I'll quickly go for it. But so this one, everybody brings the ingredients for the spiritual bath, and then they take a bit out of each bundle to form the final sponge that will be used to bath her. And then what happens is the remainder of the sponge is now shared amongst everybody that's there. There is not a break in that communication. So that is important for us. So it's interconnected. We are interconnected in every way, shape, or form. So something happening to you or being presented to you can be a message for someone else. So even in the vulnerability of other individuals in the community, provided that the other community is relatively strong, we can help that with them. I know there's been many times I've been going through so much and I haven't honored myself in a spiritual way, and I've had my friends come and give me the messages that I desperately needed. And so in all of this, plants are central to it all in our practice of herbalism. Let's not separate it from the everyday and everything that we do. So there's lots of plants that are involved. Better melon has been mentioned forever. So we call it Nyanyara. It's a protector of evil. The picture that you see is a priestess wearing it around her neck. We also have Machung, which is the inflorescence of the palm tree. And I remember seeing it burned on the corner of a building, and they said that's where an energy is. And I said, why are you burning it? And he said, because God loves the smell. And that for me is fine. Then we have tungcho, which is camwood, which we spread on the body, and we also use it in spiritual artwork. And the couture that you've seen, again, we use it for ritual baths and so on. So culture and traditions should facilitate a seamless interaction between nature and us. We are all one. Culture and traditions are the environment in which the practice of herbalism can be reached to its full extent. So that's my presentation. This is the QR code for my YouTube channel. So do feel free to scan it and subscribe. I talk a lot about plants, African plants and heritage. I also talk about health conditions in plain English. I'm a big fan of plain English. Do not confuse me with big English, big words. Like I don't get it. I don't understand. Speak to me in the language that I understand. And so a lot of the things that I talk about, I talk about from the perspective of the everyday person who has no understanding of science whatsoever, because I want to empower you to make your own decisions. If you understand your body, if you understand the signs early enough, you can do something about it before you're forced to rely on a system that was not built with your health in mind. And just to also let you know, I have a free download. So if you go to my Instagram channel, Chofanye, I've got the link to a mailing list, and then there's a cloud read journal. So for those of you who want to observe your soul day, that journal will help you be able to do that, and you can reset on a weekly basis so that you have your spirituality in mind.
That's yes, come on, free download the newsletter. I remember telling her, I'm like, hey, make sure you have something to be able to capture your audience. And
I was listening, my ears were like this. I was like, Abril's giving me advice, literally. Abril has been guiding me like a mother and child, and I've just been sitting there like this. Okay. So yeah, I decided to set up a mailing list. I listened.
Honestly, that's my goal. I've been able to be, what people would consider a success in this space and get my knowledge out. And I'm like, I want to provide a platform for other people. You all have so much rich indigenous knowledge, and I'm just like, it's not being heard. So how can I provide a platform for others so they can hear their medicine, so we can buy their books, so we can learn from them? I see you all, but I wanted to be able to get your medicine to people. So thank you so much, Naa Adjeley. I do think that this session that you did was so needed. As someone who is mixed indigenous, but who's grown up, in traditionally African American household, I've always thought it's such a shame that we have been so stripped from our culture, from all of these ceremonies. When I travel the world, I see that literally every culture still holds true to their actual ceremonies, from temescals. The Mayan ladies would go on temescals, to do their hair or to give birth, or to just to bond and connect naked. Yeah. That was a part of what the things that they did in their actual culture. Every culture has some form of rituals and ceremonies. And unfortunately, as someone who was raised traditionally in an African American household, we've been stripped from that. We don't know what our ceremonies and cultures are, or customs are, or rituals are. So I think it's so important, especially if you are someone from the diaspora, to listen to this, this segment to show that this is what you come from. You did come from something. Your culture, in your culture, if you came from West Africa, we did have these ceremonies that were practiced, and unfortunately, again, we were stripped from it. So I think that it was very important to learn just a little bit about some of the things that our ancestors did practice. Some of the things that, if we were still in our culture, these are some of the things that we would observe. So I do appreciate you for that. Admin, if you can, please drop in the chat Naa Adjeley's links. We have her links right there. Y'all, first of all, let's take some time out. Do me a favor, click on her YouTube channel. Let's get her to 1,000 subscribers. Everybody, right now, go to her YouTube channel right there in the chat and subscribe. She's at 600. She just had a video that got like 1,000 views. So I'm like, you
Yeah, that
are
was the
so,
Ghana herbal medicine, and I've posted a Nigeria one today. So
yes. Get her subscribed. It is 313 of you all here live. If every single one of you subscribe to her YouTube channel, we will have her at almost 1,000 subscribers. Those of you all, the thousands that are going to be watching the replay, do the same thing. We're going to share her YouTube channel is at Trafanye, right?
yes, that's right.
On
But
YouTube. So
just before, also, I just wanted to say to people that, like I mentioned, the African spirit is in all of us, and our ancestors can speak through you. So even if you've left your culture behind, you can create a new culture. There's a proverb a statement that I like, that civilizations flourish when we plant trees under which we will never sit. So you can plant a tree in this generation that will give shade to your future generations. So we could always start something new, so that future generations don't have to go through what we've gone through.
yes, Ashe. Thank you so much. Y'all need to subscribe to her YouTube. Everyone, if you're watching from home, I know again we have thousands of you all watching from home, but you can't be here live. Go ahead at Trafanye on YouTube. It's on the screen. Get her to 1,000. Get her to 1,000. By the end of this week, we're gonna manifest you have 1,000 followers. Her videos are so amazing, and I'm just like, if only more people watch them. So thank you so much, Naa Adjeley. Our other speaker is here. She's waiting patiently and she's in the waiting room. Thank you so much. You will see Naa Adjeley. She's going to be hosting our VIP networking session, where I'm hoping to end around 5:30. So you all can go directly from this to that session and ask all of your questions. She's going to be your speaker. I'm not sure if anyone else is going to show up. Hopefully, we're going to have more speakers, but she'll be the main speaker there to answer your questions. So thank you again, Naa Adjeley. Thank you. Wait, what's your favorite color?
You know what? Today I'm gonna go with purple. So
Yes, y'all know what to do. Go ahead and show her some love in
thank
the
you.
chat. That's for
I
you.
appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
We got tons of purple hearts coming in for Naa Adjeley. All right, thank you so much, Naa Adjeley. I'm gonna go ahead and bring on our next speaker.
All right. I'm trying to think about how I'm leaving. Okay, stop share. Okay, perfect. See you all. Love you all. Thank you so much.